the anxiety that a lot of execs are experiencing it's an inbuilt, almost in the bones sense that they are responsible for making something happen. That there is inside of them this deep sense that they've been called into a position of leadership, and therefore they need to have solutions and answers to fix the problems. And that's a deep anxiety that's present. And it's in all of us. I mean, I've been a parent long enough to know it doesn't just exist. That's a normative default that's there, that's going on. And it's really critical to say that in terms of what we're observing. I think the second thing in terms of this need to fix that Cheryl was pressing into was that the systems that we know are the systems that we know. And we got to the positions that we've got to largely because we've been good at managing them. And so the default inside of us is to try to manage and deal with the systems that we know. But the fundamental issue underneath is that the way these systems have been constructed are simply no longer sufficient or adequate for the spaces and the contexts in which we find ourselves. And therefore, all the fixing in the world is not going to address the underlying issues. And for us, it is a learning that we've done over a number of years that in this unraveling of systems that are going on, it is God who is present. And while it would take more time to describe, that this unraveling and this anxiety and this awkward space is actually a work of the Spirit of God. And that God's Spirit is inviting us into a place that requires a much different kind of leadership. And it's a leadership that's about listening and discerning what is already happening and bubbling amongst God's people themselves, so that in congregations, amongst clergy, there is already a bubbling up of the work of the Spirit. Often people can't name it that way. And therefore, the work of leadership is not primarily to try to fix, but how, in the midst of the space of unraveling, to invite God's people to hear and listen and discern the ways the Spirit is creating new life amongst them. That's the fundamental shift. The challenge of that shift is that we as leaders will only be able to do that kind of leadership to the extent that we lay down our need to come up with fixes and programs and strategies. And that's an awkward space. But that's the space into which God is inviting us, that letting go.
What are the steps that you see pastors taking to let go of their need to fix the church? What does that look like for them?
I think that's a more difficult challenge for our pastors because we've instilled the sense that they are responsible as leaders. That's their job. And so again, I think being together in a network of a cohort group and that cohort learning and encouraging one another, allowing them again to share their struggles, but then also find places of hope and things that they can experiment with and try and develop their capacities as missional leaders has been really important for our pastors.
John, you could tell a story about, I can't remember her name now, but on the East Coast, whose whole adaptive challenge was how to let go. You know the one I mean?
Yes, I do. I think for most clergy and I think for most executives, there is this high degree that people need to be in control and need to be seen as being able to lead and to be able to fix. And many of our situations is that we're either clergy-centric, everybody's looking to us for answers. I have two clergy people that are part of an Episcopal system out on the East Coast that had made their challenge to sort of let go of that need to be in control and to fix, and are learning how to pass the work back to their people. And they've said that very openly and framed that in their system to their leadership, and have asked for help to work that out even within their system. And it's been amazing to see the sense of relief and the sense of joy that these leaders are now having, to see that their task is very different, and it's rooted in a very different spiritual discipline. And I guess the thing I'd want to say to you is that this process takes time, and you need to allow there to be time. It's a time of discernment. And I think it's also a time of patience, that if the Spirit of God really is out there, that God will speak into where we are as we allow that to happen. And I've just seen a lot of clergy's lives transformed out of letting go of that need.
Just add to that, I was out on the East Coast with that diocese about 2 weeks ago, and that clergy person with her team was sharing with us what they're doing in the neighborhood, and it just brought tears to my eyes. Both her capacity to let go and enter a different kind of leadership, and to listen to the stories of those people in their engagements in their neighborhood. It was a great experience.